Hey, okay, so I just saw Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem. I apologize for getting this to you a little late. I'm just doing kind of a fast vlog review of this because I got shingles, if you can believe it. I got it, maybe 3 weeks ago now, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it just took me out of commission for a little bit of time. Even the NC reviews are kind of done just audio for, I think I got two. One just came out yesterday, and another's coming out next week, but after that, back to normal. Blah, blah, blah. But I still wanted to talk about this movie because I grew up a huge Ninja Turtles fan. And before I talk about this film, again, I usually talk about like my knowledge of the material and stuff like that. A die-hard Ninja Turtles fan when I was a kid. Up till about like maybe movie 3, I was just totally obsessed with them and everything that came out about them. So by the time Ninja Turtles 3 came out, I started to get out of it, but I still paid attention to it a little bit. Like if a new show came out, I'd watch like a little bit of it just to kind of get like the feel of it. The new movie came out, I'd always see the new movie and everything. So yeah, now we have this new version that's come out, produced by Seth Rogen, even kind of written by him and everything. And man, do I have some extreme reactions to it, man. Oh my god, my just passion for this movie it was good. That's really about it. It's a decent movie. It's good. As someone who loved Ninja Turtles growing up and still tries to keep on top of it a little bit. Like I said, I wouldn't say I'm a die-hard fan still, but I do still like to keep in touch with it, you know, sort of like an old friend kind of thing. I think this is a good movie. I don't think it's like the definitive Ninja Turtles. I also don't think it's like so different that it destroys what Ninja Turtles is or anything. But there's a lot of things I like about it. There's things I don't like about it, but there's nothing in it that I passionately love or passionately hate. It's just a good flick. Honestly, it's another one of those films I feel like I've said this a million times, where if you see the trailer, you say, that looks good. You're gonna think it's good. It's one of those movies. The two things I think I like the most about it that stood out as like, okay, I'm really enjoying sort of this take on. One is the animation, which is not a big surprise. This is very much like the Spider-Verse movies, though not quite to a point where you can call it a ripoff. Though even if it was a ripoff, I'd probably be okay with that because the Spider-Verse style is just so amazing to me. There's so much you can admire and look at. I love combining the 3D angle with the 2D angle. I love the fact that when there's a bright light in this, you know, it isn't just the typical CG thing where it's like a lens flare or anything. There's actual like lines around it, like someone just took like a yellow pen and drew sort of like the comic book style. There's a lot of cross-hatching in this and cross-patching, all that stuff. So yeah, I really like the style of this movie. It's just unique enough. It honestly reminded me of like the original Eastman Laird comics, like that's where it stops. Though I think after that, I don't think it's going to be quite as bloody or gritty or anything like that. But the look of it definitely did remind me of like the original comics that came out years ago. And I really like that because I like that style. And it's cool to see it both still look hand-drawn, but also in 3 dimensions. So I really, really enjoyed that. The other angle I really liked, which I always felt was kind of missing from a lot of Ninja Turtle different versions, is that they really focus on the teenage element of it. Now, again, I will admit I didn't really watch too much of the other shows that came out. From what I hear, some of them do focus a little bit more on it, but I always felt like I watched like a little bit of it to get a feel, and like, yeah, they do, but you definitely never got that much in the movies. They would just sort of say things like "cowabunga, dude," and sort of surfer phrases, and then be like, well, that's our teenage angle, and it's like, this one really focuses on what it's like, you know, to be like a teenager growing up and feeling like an outcast, certainly, and trying to find your place in the world, trying to fit in, having a parent played very well by Jackie Chan in the surprisingly, like, really well. I was legit really shocked by that. Who is very overprotective and doesn't want them going out too much into the real world. They change a lot of elements to the story, which some things I have some, you know, moments or bits I don't like about it, but a lot of it is changes that I want to see, and I want to kind of look at this idea from a different point of view, and that's what this does. I feel it offers just enough a unique point of view where you can look at this about these four boys. They really are boys in this version. They really are teenagers, like I said, where they'll even have like the voices don't just sound like 20 or 30-year-old men, again, just doing servitude voices. Like they really do sound like kids, trying to, understand these creatures that they're growing up around, these humans that their father Splinter is telling them they don't go near, they're terrible and awful and stuff like that, which of course makes it very obvious what the moral of the story is going to be, but the way they come to that conclusion is kind of what makes it interesting, and the way also the human world kind of comes to that conclusion that they're not bad and everything. And then of course the in-between where you have these other mutants, which is just like, really is Mutant Mayhem, man. They throw in a lot of old school mutants in here. Like, I can't remember the last time I heard Mondo Gecko. Like, that was really cool to see. I love when, like, I know I always talk about we're relying too much on nostalgia in modern day media and stuff like that. Again, I should talk nostalgia critic and everything, but I do still really love it when something pops up that you just legit forget about, and just when I heard the name Mondo Gecko, I'm like, oh, they used to be like my favorite non-turtle mutant, oh my god, there he is, and they make him pretty funny. But even what they're doing in terms of being outcasts and what they want to do about it and stuff like that, it certainly has a lot of callbacks to what we've seen in like the X-Men movies. There's a plan very similar to like what Magneto wanted to do, turning all humans into mutants. I think that's literally the plan. No, it's close to the plan. It's very, very similar. I guess I won't ruin it in case you haven't seen it, but it's a very similar plan. The villain in this is not Shredder. They have a couple different villains going on. The main one is Superfly, who is funny. I would have liked if he was a bit more of a menace, but I feel like the focus was more on sort of the idea what they're trying to get across with his anger at humanity and what his plan is, and then mixing that in with a lot of humor. And the humor is good. What they do with him, particularly in the third act, is very, very funny and very, very imaginative, and led to a lot of really good belly laughs from me. With that said, I say there's about, I mean this in a plus way, a pro way, there's about 5 good belly laughs that I got in this movie, where I was laughing really hard. And the rest of the jokes, I would argue the writing in this movie is very There's definitely a lot of exposition-y moments. There's a lot of jokes that don't land, but when a joke doesn't land, it's not aggravating, it's not annoying, and I think a lot of that comes from the acting from the 4 turtles. I think these 4 really do have good chemistry. I think they, again, really capture that excitement and that energy of being a teenager and discovering something new. There's also some really fun points of view about what they think the real world is like. Like, they see somebody watching Ferris Bueller and they're like, so that's what high school is like? You can just start a parade whenever you want, man? It's like, yeah, as long as you don't look like us. Like, they just think that's how the human world works, and all of that's very, very funny, very enjoyable. What kind of surprised me in terms of things I feel like it didn't work, but in no way destroyed the film, but did kind of hold me back from, like, you know, loving it, is it's interesting because I feel like they put a lot more development on Leonardo in this, which has always been, I feel like the turtle has just been like shit on over the years. Like, nobody gives a crap about Leonardo. He's usually not that great a leader. He's the Boy Scout. He's the boring character. But they do, now they make him eventually a good leader. They still have him kind of starting off as a bad leader, but they work that in an interesting way, a way that I feel like teenagers would look at and say, man, yeah, I recognize that. I recognize that when I'm trying to be a leader, it doesn't work, or I still want to be, you know, friends with my boys and stuff like that, you know, but I got to be the authority figure. All that is tied in, getting in the way of, like, personal stuff, you know, or even crushes. Like, some of the turtles have crushes in this and stuff, and they're trying to, you know, keep that out and focus on the task at hand and stuff like that. And Donatello, I'm not going to act like has, like, a ton of development, but the voice they picked for him, which at first I thought was going to be really distracting, and in some ways is. I feel like that voice should have been from Michelangelo but I'll get to that in a second. The voice acting really brought a lot to that character, because you don't really see him do much in terms of, like, the geek stuff, the tech stuff, and everything, but once in a while they'll say, like, yeah, I don't know, he watches anime or something like that, or maybe he, like, fixes something, like, very briefly, so it's there, but most of that brought through the voice acting is what made that character work okay. Michelangelo and Raphael are surprisingly kind of underdeveloped in this, which is really weird, because those are usually the two that they focus the most on in these movies, because Michelangelo's usually the funny one, has all the great one-liners. Sometimes it's Raphael, if you're going by the original cartoon, but lately, Raphael has been, like, the tough guy, the one that wants to go in guns a-blazing and stuff like that. So that's, like, the main two things that, like, usually people focus on with the Turtles, and then Donatello, is the geeky one. Some people, or he does the machine stuff. Some people like that too. So mainly those three get equal development, are usually handled okay. But that's two of the big ones that people usually like the most. Really not getting a ton of focus or having that much personality. Again, the personality they do have is brought through the acting, the voice acting. But in terms of really being surprised by that, I was kind of curious that they didn't throw in more of Michelangelo maybe being sort of the goofy guy, or maybe not the brightest, and Raphael really being much more filled with anger and wanting to go in guns a-blazing and stuff. They only tap on that. Like Michelangelo, I think there's one point they go into a school and he sees a sign up for, like, improv, and he's like, ooh, I'll sign up for that. I'm like, oh, is that his thing? He's like, improv? And then there's a little speech at the end where Leonardo's saying what everybody does so great. And they said, Mikey, your ability to think on your feet and improvise. It's like, oh, I guess that's Michelangelo's thing. And then Raphael, same thing. He's like, they always say, go loud. You're loud, Raphael. Go in guns a-blazing. But there's not a ton of development with that. I mean, especially when you compare to, like, other versions of that character, they really do kind of address, like, the anger he's going through and not knowing where to put it, so he puts it into violence and stuff like that. And again, I'm not gonna act like those were phenomenal character developments either, but I feel like they really dive more into that, especially being a teenager, than they do in this, and I feel like they were kind of missing that. I feel like when you have the other mutants talking about their plan, and they sort of, I like the fact they all kind of think for a second, well, do we want to do this? Because we haven't really been the biggest fan of humanity right now either. I really feel like there should have been more, like, one of them should have really been like, no, I think this is a good idea. And Raphael should have been that one. So it's one of those things where it still works okay because the chemistry they have working off of each other is good, and they do get some, decent laughs out of it. The other mutants look really good. Most of the voice acting is good for them. The only one that just stood out like a sore thumb to me, because again, they do change, like, some of the genders and races and stuff like that. Like, Seth MacFarlane is Bebop, which is really weird to hear a white guy doing that voice. But then again, we had that black guy doing Shredder, so I mean, again, I'm not too picky about that. But Wingnut, which is another one, I haven't heard, like, that name in forever. I'm pretty sure, I have to double check, I think it's the actress from What We Do in the Shadows, who is very, very funny, and I thought she brought a lot to that role, which again doesn't have a ton of writing or a ton of character, but she brought a lot to it. The one I just was like, nah, that ain't working, man, is a Leatherhead. Is it Leatherhead or Leatherface? I can't remember. The alligator, who has this great design. I mean, just this cool, creepy design. Has, like, these weird glowing goggles and everything, the big hat and everything, but has this Australian lady, so it's very perky Australian lady, and I did not think that worked at all. If you're gonna do a lady voice, make it like a creepy voice or something like that, something that goes with that design. That did not match at all to me, but still look cool. Leatherhead still look pretty cool in this. Again, like Mondo Gecko, I thought was a lot of fun in this. They have another villain in this who, I don't know if I missed this character in different version of the shows or the comics or something. It's this lady that kind of wants to make, like, a mutant army, which, sounds like you can do something with that. But aside from the voice, which is kind of fun, it's kind of a cool voice, and then the design is kind of cool, she didn't really leave that much of an impression on me. And then in the after credit sequence, without going to spoilers, what it looks like they're going to do with that, I was kind of too. Like, I don't like what they're kind of doing with this character, making it look like a, like a character for hire kind of thing. I wasn't digging that, but maybe we'll see what they do in the sequel. If we get a sequel, we probably will. Sounds like it's doing okay. April's not bad. In my opinion, I haven't seen, like, again, this is going as a guy who has not really paid that much attention to Ninja Turtles since, like, you know, movie 3 and stuff like that. But the April that I always point to, I say, that's April, man. That's who that character is. That's what I think of. I do think of the original cartoon. I do think of Judith Hogue, even though I know I made some jokes, like, in one of the earliest reviews I ever did, saying, that's not April, that's not what she looks like, but that's still the attitude and the character that I think of, someone that loves her job, loves getting the story. I mean, so much of her identity is tied around her job and her love of her job and her passion for it and getting the truth out there and doing it just with this incredible energy and excitement and just loving it. At some point, they made her a kid. And to me, after you do that, I'm like, okay, this is just something completely different than like what I remember growing up with and what I associate the character with. But a lot of people say when they did that, she was still done well. I think that's the CG one, where like she has a crush on like Donatello, or vice versa. I think Donatello has a crush on her. Anyway, to me, I'm like, all right, that's something different, but cool. Everybody says it works. A lot of people say it's like the best version of the Ninja Turtle show. I still have to watch the whole thing, but so I guess they're doing like a mix of that, and I guess what they were doing in Rise of the Ninja Turtles, where it's the same thing. She's a kid, but she's kind of like, you know, like in high school. And I guess in Rise of the Ninja Turtles, she was a little bit more of like, I can't really saw a little bit of it, a little bit of like a party girl. I think just like film and stuff like, whoa, like that definitely wasn't like a journalist. So in this, like she's writing for like the school paper, and she has this funny thing that happens when they try to do like the announcements at school, the thing where they like film it and show it in front of the school. I won't ruin it. It's pretty funny. So I like the idea that she wants to be a journalist, but she has this fear of going on camera, and she has to kind of conquer that. Like, that's all pretty fun. So, like I said, to me, a big part of April's identity is working in the reporter thing. I guess the voice actress even said, the original voice actress said of the first Turtles cartoon, said like a lot of women have come up to her and said, I got into journalism because of you, because of April O'Neil. It's like, that's friggin' awesome. Like, that's really so much of what I connect to her identity. Like, not just being a reporter, because like Megan Fox was a reporter and stuff like that, but like that energy, that passion, that drive. So it's hard for me to separate that from the character. So when I see them trying to work that in a little bit more, that is nice. But getting over the age thing is it's a little odd for me, but again, they change a lot over the years, and that's what I always find so fascinating about watching Ninja Turtles over the years, is that, you know, I grew up loving the cartoon and the comics and everything. I would not have predicted this is something that is still going. This is like another Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Avengers, and all that stuff. So it's interesting to see, and I'm not gonna pretend like, yes, this is the next Batman, Wonder Woman, all that stuff. I really feel like there's much more to those characters, but at the same time, it is nice to see something that at times can have depth, but is mainly just there to have fun, and is there to tell some jokes, fight some crime, and just have a good time. You know, break the fourth wall every once in a while, and even though sometimes they have gone a little bit more serious with it, even the original comics, which are very, very dark, are still satires. I mean, they're meant to be like sort of overly gritty and dark, and that's kind of the joke. They're Ninja Turtles. So, yeah, it is something where it's cool to see it still around, but I'm definitely not going to act like this is the definitive Ninja Turtles now, though it is nice to see that they seem to be picking and choosing kind of what they like a cafeteria of what they enjoy the most out of Ninja Turtles. I really like, even though, I mean, you know, I'm not the biggest fan of the Michael Bay films, I like they're incorporating certain things they worked in there, like giving Donatello glasses. From some of the older versions, I remember Raphael would have like kind of a bandana that covered like the whole head kind of thing. They're doing that with this. I love they have the initials on the belts. That's really, really great. So I do kind of like that it's changing over time and evolving, and they're just kind of picking what they think works and what they think doesn't, and trying to tell it from a new light, and I'm okay with that. Like I said, it's hard for me to say there's like a definitive Ninja Turtles out there if you're to say, what's the best one? A lot of people say it's the CG Nickelodeon one. My guess is they're probably right because so many people have told me that. But again, you don't have April as like, the reporter in that and stuff like that. It's not hand-drawn. They look a little different and stuff like that. So I feel like a lot of these, everyone has like a piece of the puzzle. It's hard to say what the absolute perfect one is. My heart's always going to go to the original comics, the original movie, the original cartoon. But I'm not going to say that's like the best one either. So I've gotten more and more okay with the way they've tried to mix and match Ninja Turtles, which I think is it's interesting to watch. I don't think it's ever going to be Batman. I don't think it ever should be Batman. It should be kind of the ones that they're more kind of the outliers. They're more just kind of odd and weird but fun and just having a good time. Just superheroes that want to like kick butt and tell some jokes. Like, I think that's really nice. We need those still. And we're not short of them, but it's interesting to have one that's just continual. Like they're always going to come back, which is interesting. It so seemed like a product of the times. It's great to see it constantly come back. But I'm definitely not going to act like this is the voice of a generation or anything, that the heroes we need now kind of thing. Maybe some point they'll get to that. I don't know. But they were made as like a satire of comics at the time and then made to sell toys and just have a good time. And I'm okay with that. If we want to add more to it, that's fine. Again, there's a very clear message in this that sometimes can be hammered a little bit too much on the head, but I don't know. It's done okay. There's definitely stuff I feel like, again, especially teens can watch this movie and get some good messages out of it. So, I had a good time with it. I can't, like I said, act like it's something you should rush out to see. Is it worth seeing on the big screen? Yeah, but you can probably get a pretty similar experience, streaming it, honestly. If you got like a good TV and you're watching the clearest quality, I think you'll still get a good experience out of it. There's not much I say you have to see on the big screen, especially because it is so dark. That is one of the few things in it where I feel like with Spider-Verse, they do have dark moments, but I mean, like, it's mostly very well lit, so when the fast action is happening, you can follow it perfectly. Where in this one, the action is good and it is fun, but because it's so dark, sometimes you kind of miss what happened there, that character get hit, or what happened there. 90% of the time, you can follow it fine, but I'm saying it's not quite like Spider-Verse, where you need to see it on the big screen, because it's like such an experience. It's a good movie, it's a good style, it's got some good jokes in it. Again, there's going to be stuff that I'm not 100% going to be behind, like near the end, they kind of do a thing where like they're taking off the bandanas and they're going to walk among people and stuff like that. And I'm like, to me, that's not Ninja Turtles. They should always kind of be hiding out and in the sewers and stuff like that. Everything's just a little too happy at the end, but yeah, again, that's going to be a little bit more of like a personal preference. And obviously they had a message they wanted to get across in this, and they had a slightly different take that they wanted to do with this movie, and they did it, and it's still enough of Ninja Turtles that I think this works, even though, again, they're not having Splinter be, a rat from Japan or anything, or at the very least, they're not acknowledging that. They just start with him in New York pretty much as this little rat. They're not really going much into like the Shredder story and stuff like that. Like, they are changing it up. I'm okay with that, because again, I don't think it's like Ninja Turtles is like sacred lore or anything like that. I'm open to changes, even though there's stuff that I'm gonna like more than others. Like I said, I always connected April to like her job. That's the big thing. But a lot of people say there's different versions that have worked well. I believe them. It's just a personal preference kind of thing. So with that said, if you've seen this movie, what are your thoughts on it? Did you enjoy it? Did you think it was a lot of fun? Or you think it was just a stab in the back of everything that Ninja Turtles is? Or you think it's somewhere in between where, it's okay enough, but it's not like the best Turtles property? And on that note, what's your favorite Ninja Turtles property? Whether it's one of the comics or one of the shows or one of the movies? Because I feel like that is such a good question now, because there's so many different versions of the characters now, which is, still crazy cool to think of. Or even like if you were to pick like, man, what would you pick from sort of each version of Ninja Turtles to make your perfect Ninja Turtles version? Like, what would you pick? Because that seems to be what a lot of people are doing now, and it's honestly not that bad. I'm kind of open to it. So that's about it. I'll see you next time. Take care.